Hello, Simon.
Hello, Bruce. How are you today?
I'm absolutely pipping, thank you very much. How are you?
Pipping. That's wonderful to hear. I am all right, thank you. Not too shabby.
Not too shabby.
Not too shabby.
Well, you do look very smart in that wingtip collar.
Well, I thought I'd dress for the occasion. I'm admiring your fuchsia tuxedo.
Oh, well, it matches the new upholstery.
It does, yeah, indeed. We'll leave this up to the listeners to decide whether we're telling the truth or not. So, dear listeners, hello, good afternoon and welcome. Don't know why I said good afternoon, it's the morning where we are, but you might be listening to us at any time during the day, whatever you're up to.
It's 3 a.m, you can't sleep, so you're having to listen to this. Really sorry.
Absolutely. You're out for a walk with the dog and it's a little bit too quiet, so you're listening to us.
Yes.
Anything.
And what are we doing?
Well, we are doing, first, by way of introduction, this fella over here is Bruce Fielding.
And that one over there is Simon Wells.
And we are professional voiceover artists, which is why we sound like this.
Yeah, you can tell that we do this for a living.
It's obvious, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
Obvious. When we're not doing it for a living, we do it for fun. We both like a good chinwag. We like a little bit of a chat about useless facts. Not useless.
No,
they're
not
useful.
useless.
They're wonderful.
Yes,
random.
Lesser used.
Yes, random facts, unusual facts, quirky, interesting, never knew that facts, because that's just the kind of people we are. So what is the topic that we are talking about this week, Bruce?
Well, as you have read on the title of this podcast,
Indeed.
it's dolls.
It is dolls. The word doll, well, actually, let's start with the definition of doll. I mean, we all know what a doll is. We all know what a doll looks like. But the definition is a small model of a human figure, typically of a baby or a girl, used as a child's toy, which kind of covers it all, except a few variations that we'll talk about later on. The word doll, it's the nickname for Dorothy. It's sort of the pet name for someone called Dorothy.
Yeah.
Doll. How old are dolls? Where do dolls come from?
Okay, you're going to tell me they are either A, Egyptian or B, Roman.
You know me so well. They're Egyptian, Bruce.
Are they?
Yeah.
Okay.
They are. So there are archaeological finds that have been dug up from ancient Egypt, showing that dolls were a thing back around 3000 odd BC. And these particular dolls were generally sort of carved out of flat pieces of wood. They weren't particularly ornate or fancy or lifelike. They were just, carved from bits of wood. Often the hair was sort of made out of strings of clay or wooden beads tied together. But they were fairly rudimentary. They were often tokens and sort of religious items that were often buried with the Egyptians as symbols of whatever. It wasn't until some time after that they started being toys, children's playthings. But it has been suggested that they are the oldest form of toy in the world.
I'm imagining something like a wooden spoon.
Yeah.
So like with the spoon bit as the head.
Yeah, something like that. So yes, it was ancient Egyptian origins. Around ancient Greece is when they sort of specifically start being playthings for girls, stereotypically. So they've sort of been religious icons and things like that. They've been burial trinkets. Around ancient Greece, we sort of start seeing them being a bit more effeminate, a bit more childlike, a bit more deliberately playful.
Yeah.
The Romans, this was interesting, both Romans and Greeks, if a girl had a doll, they would dedicate it to the goddess Artemis in Greece.
Oh, yes, okay.
And in Rome, they would often dedicate her to the goddess Venus. And they became sort of marriage symbols. That they would sort of hold on to these dolls, and at the age of their marriage, they would dedicate these dolls to their respective gods. If the child died before the age of getting married, the dolls would be buried with them.
You talked about them being female. I'm going to say Action Man.
Oh, I love you just a little bit more now. You went there. Brilliant.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
I think Action Man's quite interesting because G.I. Joe was invented in America. So G.I. Joe was licensed to a British company, but because we don't have GIs.
No.
They decided that G.I. Joe wouldn't really work.
Okay, yes, we just wouldn't understand the terminology.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
So they licensed it to Palitoy in the UK, who rebranded it Action Man. But Palitoy sort of took the technology that G.I. Joe had invented and they took it further forward. They put in things like hands that gripped things and eagle eyes and all that stuff. And because they only had a license, the G.I. Joe people nicked all those ideas and basically put them all into G.I. Joe.
Oh, I see. So Action Man actually became more advanced than the thing that it was based on, G.I. Joe, and then G.I. Joe took their technology and adopted it to theirs.
Exactly. Things like hair and beards and stuff were all Action Man, whereas G.I. Joe was clean-shaven and had like a buzz cut.
Oh, I see. Oh, interesting. I'm so glad you went here. I've had an ongoing debate with many of my friends over the years, is Action Man a doll? And many people will say, no, of course he's not. He's an action figure. But if we go by the definition that we had earlier on, it's a miniaturized human with, interchangeable clothes and accessories and so on, then yeah, of course Action Man is a doll.
Yeah.
He's just a very actiony one.
Exactly.
Did you ever have Action Men?
I think I had an Action Man, but I was more interested in, you could buy an army in a box of little figures that you could then plan out. I don't know whether you would call those dolls, but they are miniaturized people.
Yeah, it's a tricky one. If we're calling Action Man a doll, then that leads us into basically the whole of my childhood. I was a big action figure collector when I was a kid. So I had Transformers, I had He-Man, I had Ninja Turtles, I had all of these things. I would be very, very cautious to call those dolls because they're action figures. But I collected Action Man quite a bit when I was a young'un. I had various different variations of them. As you say, they sort of came with some with beards, some with hair, some with different coloured hair. I remember getting my first Eagle Eyes Action Man. In fact, I remember asking Santa Claus for an Eagle Eyes Action Man one year. And it was just fantastic. All the little accessories. You had backpacks and belts. You had guns and different sort of weapons. Yep. And they were obviously all military based. So I had a tank, I had a jeep, I had all of these things. I went in for it whole hog. I had... when my parents last moved house and we went through the loft and we found a whole load of our childhood items, there were my Action Men, and I started, playing with them, frankly.
Of course you do.
In my late 30s. And blow me, I opened up the Velcro pocket on the back of my Action Man's trousers. There was a tiny little folded map inside.
And you never knew.
I never realised. I was so delighted.
There's all sorts of difficulties with dolls, aren't there?
All sorts.
Yes.
All sorts.
I mean, is Mr. Potato Head a doll?
Oh, crikey.
I mean, you play with it and it's got eyes and legs and stuff, but it's realistically
it's kind of human-like, isn't it? It's got a face and a character and a personality. Yeah, okay, we'll throw him in as a doll. Why not?
And what about Matryoshka?
Who?
Matryoshka.
Ah, Russian dolls.
Yes.
Yes. That certainly, it's in the name, isn't it? That certainly counts as a doll, I think.
Yeah, well, we call them Russian dolls, but they're not called Russian dolls in Russia.
No,
it's a
they're
bit
not.
like Chinese food isn't called Chinese food in China.
No, it's just food. I've often wondered, do you get Canada geese in Canada, or are they just geese?
Interesting. Yes, so those doll within a doll within a doll.
Yes, nested dolls.
Yes. And you can go quite a long way with those. You can go from very big ones to very small ones. Do you know what the record is?
No, I don't. Go on.
72.
Really?
Yeah.
That's going to start off very big and end up very small.
Yeah.
Crikey.
And they're all going to be very thin.
Wow. Gosh. In some countries, they're referred to as babushka dolls, which is Russian for grandmother.
Yeah.
Again, not called that in Russia. It's just something we've added onto them.
They generally wear sort of like a traditional Russian sweater.
Yes, and I think there's sort of tradition. It's quite a matriarchal thing, isn't it? The largest doll on the outside could represent a mother.
Yeah.
And then sometimes you get ones that are within that are sort of painted up to be children, and then the smallest one right at the end might be a baby. And
well, except if they're 72, I think you have to start with a great-great-grandmother.
Crikey, that'd be generational. There are quite a few different types of Russian dolls these days. Obviously, they sort of coming from the location and the era where they're from. I think they first came about in the late 1800s. And they were, quite rigidly traditional and Russian looking.
Yeah.
But But these days you can get Russian dolls of the Simpsons family, of Star Wars characters, SpongeBob SquarePants characters, political leaders and celebrities, one within another.
Yes.
Fascinating things. They sort of, I like the novelty of them. But sort of once you've taken them apart and put them back together again, they don't really do much else.
No, they just sit and gather dust.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Unless you have friends around with young children and it occupies them for a good sort of like 35 seconds.
Yes.
Do you know about Ningyo Japanese dolls?
No, I do not.
So Ningyo, they are these beautiful ceramic porcelain dolls. And there's a hierarchy. So you can buy everybody in the Japanese court, from the emperor and empress to the musicians, to the courtiers, to the samurai. All the different levels of hierarchy in the Japanese court are represented by these dolls, and they are beautiful. They were very popular in the Edo period, which is like 17th century to 19th century.
Okay.
They are beautiful. And I tell you what, I shall put a link in the blog, which is at Factoraly.com.
Factoraly.com?
That's the one.
Marvellous. I had a previous career as a postman, and I used to deliver to an elderly lady who had a collection of porcelain dolls. And they occupied the entire lounge. They were sitting on every surface. They were on shelves around the walls. They were on tables. Really sort of beautiful, but in a slightly creepy way.
Yes. Were they dolls, though, or figurines?
No, these were... Oh, right. So I see a figurine as being a solid item that doesn't move. I see a doll as having flexible parts.
Yeah. So some of these ningyos actually had mechanisms inside them to do stuff. Like one would like put a mask on its face and things like if you turn the little wheel. Oh, yeah.
Brilliant.
Very neat. And they were considered... they were so beautifully made. And some of them were quite big. So the royal house decided that if it was over 24 centimetres, it wasn't fit for commoners.
Oh, really?
So commoners couldn't have big Ningyo dolls. They could only have little ones.
Right.
So they started to make these little, very small, beautifully miniaturised dolls for the common man or the common child.
How wonderful.
One of the things that dolls seem to have is accessories.
They do.
And talking of these Ningyo dolls, they had these beautiful, absolutely tiny sort of wooden boxes with inlay, with sort of like mother-of-pearl inlay, but absolutely minor, tiny, tiny things. Wow. And people actually made this stuff for these dolls.
Wow.
Accessories go fantastically with a place to keep dolls.
Of course.
And I went down this severe rabbit hole, I'm afraid.
Oh, you went looking at doll houses?
I went looking at dolls' houses. I don't know whether you have.
No, that never even occurred to me. Well done.
They are amazing.
Yes, they are.
And the stuff that goes into a doll's... I mean, they used to have like crockery, in doll's house crockery, which like a 1/12 scale or even smaller crockery. And there were sort of Victorian children who could make 2,000 miniature teacups a day.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
Crikey.
It defies belief. And they go back a long way. I mean, there was a doll's house found in an Egyptian dig.
Really?
So the Egyptian kids were playing with dolls' houses as well.
Wow.
But they got really popular in the 16th century.
Yeah.
And they're kind of used for two things. They were either used as like a historical document. So you could say, this is my house.
Yes, okay.
And it wasn't for kids to play with at all. It was kind of like an architectural record of the house that you were building. Or it could even be, if you hadn't built the house, you built the house at scale.
Yes, okay.
And then you could populate that house with fireplaces and paintings and all sorts of things. And then you built the house for real.
Right, so it was sort of an architect's mock-up of what the thing would look like.
Yes, and the first one of those that we know about is the Duke of Bavaria in 1550 had one of these mock-ups made.
Right.
And then a little bit later, there's a chap called Stromer in Nuremberg in 1639, and I'll put a link. It's just incredible. This little doll's house is just unbelievable. And I investigated this a bit, and there's a very interesting 1710 one with 9 rooms, which is now in the Rijksmuseum in Amsterdam, which was created by Petrona Altman, was a very rich woman who married a very rich man, so they had a lot of money.
A lot of money.
And generally speaking, dolls' houses were not for the common man. They were really expensive. There's another very wealthy woman called Susanna Wynne in 1730 who built a model of Nostell Priory.
Okay.
And I sort of, well, these are all quite good. These are all quite interesting. And then I discovered a 1924 doll's house made for Queen Mary.
Oh.
This is ridiculous. It's absolutely absurd. It was made of a scale, it was 1 to 12, so 1 inch to 1 foot.
Right.
This thing's over 3 feet tall.
Ah.
It contains models of products of well-known companies at the time. The detail, bear in mind, these are all 1/12 size replicas. There were shotguns. They had a flushable toilet with miniature lavatory paper.
No.
They had piped running water, working light fittings. Writers wrote special books to scale. Arthur Conan Doyle wrote a story called How Watson Learned the Trick, and there was a ghost story, and Somerset Maugham and George Bernard Shaw. And then composers actually wrote music for the house.
Oh, my goodness.
So, Gustav Holst, Frederick Delius, Arthur Bliss. There were paintings.
Wow.
It's just crazy. And even the bottles in the wine cellar were filled with the correct wine and spirits.
Oh, my goodness me.
The wheels of the motor vehicles were properly spoked, and some of them worked. There's a needlework miniature carpet. It is just, even if you look at a very high-quality photo of the interior, you can't tell that it's miniatures. It just doesn't look like it.
Wow.
It's just sensational.
And this was all made for Queen Mary in the 1920s, did you say?
Yes. So this was, the idea came from Queen Mary's cousin, Princess Mary Louise. It was built in the early 1920s. It was completed in 1924.
Right.
Oh, I forgot to tell you who designed it.
Go on.
Edwin Lutyens.
Who's that?
So Edwin Lutyens was like a famous Edwardian architect.
Right.
Ridiculous.
Wow. Well, that's what you get for being the Queen.
Yeah. It was first discussed at the summer exhibition in 1921.
Right.
And it was just, I could go on forever. I mean, it had a medicine chest in it, which was actually full of medicines.
Real medicines.
Real medicines. And it was about 1/2 inch wide.
Good grief. That's fantastic. Right. Everyone head over to Factoraly.com and take a look at this. This sounds amazing.
Yeah, it is quite something. I mean, you compare that with a Sylvanian family's...
Yeah, it's not quite the same level of detail.
Not quite. And no one has more accessories than you-know-who.
Well, shall we talk about you-know-who? Because she's sort of looming over the whole thing, isn't she?
Okay.
We are talking about a lady called Barbara Millicent Roberts.
Correct.
From Willows, Wisconsin.
Yes.
Better known as Barbie.
Named after the daughter of the creator.
Indeed.
As was Ken.
Yeah, Ken, yes. All right, so her kids were Barbara and Ken.
Yeah.
This was created by Ruth Handler, who was the co-founder of Mattel. And Barbie was released in March 1959. I hadn't realised this, but she essentially pilfered the idea from the Germans.
Yes.
She was on holiday in Germany, and she came across this doll called Bild Lilly.
Yeah. And
Bild Lilly was a comic strip character in Germany, and they produced a range of dolls after this comic book character. Ruth Handler went travelling in Europe on holiday, saw this doll, and directly lifted the idea. The first Barbie is very, very similar.
Yeah, I mean, she's generally dressed in sort of corsetry.
Mm-hmm.
And she was given on like stag nights, given as a present to the bridegroom.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
But there were all sorts of legal cases involved with this. She came back from her holiday and started producing Barbie. The company in America that made Bild Lilly by that time was bought out by another American company. And the American company tried to sue Mattel, specifically over infringement for the patent for the doll's hip joint. You can't just sue someone for making a doll that looks a bit like your doll, but if it uses the same technology to make the hip joint, apparently you can. So Mattel's answer to that was, well, we'll just buy out that company and then dissolve it. So then we've got no competition.
Yeah, that still happens today.
Yeah. They did the same with Cindy. Cindy was my sister was a Cindy fan rather than a Barbie fan. Cindy was a UK equivalent.
Yeah.
And again, Mattel said, nope, that's too much like ours. We'll buy it up and then cease its production so that Barbie is the only thing going. But Barbie's quite big, isn't she?
No, she's very small.
I'll rephrase that as she's quite popular, isn't she?
In fact, she's small enough so that she wouldn't actually work. I mean, she'd have to walk on all fours, basically.
Yeah, her proportions, they're not realistic, are they?
No. Her waistline's so small that I think, she'd have room for like half a liver and about a couple of centimetres of intestine.
That's ridiculous, isn't it? I think if you sort of modelled her up to life size, her legs would be 1.5 times the length of a regular leg. Her neck would be about 1.5 foot long.
But there are people who have surgery to make themselves look more like Barbie.
Oh, really?
I mean, in 1963, she came up with one of the accessories was a book titled How to Lose Weight.
Oh, crikey.
And the back were basically the words, don't eat.
No.
Yeah.
Oh, dear.
Yeah. And in 65, 2 years later, it came together with accessory scales, which were permanently set to 55 kilos.
Oh, that's so bad.
Yeah, it's awful.
She has moved with the times a little bit. I mean, she is still essentially a fashion doll with lots of clothes and accessories and mansions and fast cars and boats and ponies and so on.
Yeah.
But she's had a range of careers. Every now and then they release a new Barbie with an outfit pertaining to a particular career. Over the years, she's been a firefighter, a journalist, a surgeon, an astronaut, a pilot, and at one point a presidential candidate.
So that's 6. So you haven't mentioned the other 194.
Is that how many there really were?
There were 200 careers.
Goodness me.
Yeah.
Wow. So yeah, she's done a lot in her time as Barbie.
Yeah.
And then in 1961, it was decided that she needed a companion, and Ken was created. Ken has an equally silly, fictitious name, Kenneth Sean Carson Jr. And according to the blurb that came on the back of the packaging when he was first released, had a little bit of a backstory, also from Willows, Wisconsin, which doesn't exist. According to this backstory, Ken met Barbie on the set of a TV commercial and is now her boyfriend.
Ooh.
Isn't that great?
One of the things that obviously they don't have is
working,
yeah,
certain working parts.
And there are a couple of fruit flies named after them.
Are there?
They're scientists, okay? They name things very... There's a fruit fly which is the cheap date fruit fly, which is the one that gets drunk very easily.
Right, okay. Oh, that's
There's
great.
a Kenny fruit fly, which dies very quickly after the South Park character.
Okay, brilliant.
And then there's the Ken and Barbie ones,
right,
which don't have any external genitalia.
Oh, that's brilliant. Scientists, they're a funny lot. That's fantastic.
Yeah, Barbie's often in trouble, though. I mean, Mattel sued MCA Records.
Right.
Guess what for?
Copyright infringement?
Yes. Do you remember a band called Aqua?
Oh, the Barbie Girl song.
Yeah.
Oh.
Mattel lost that one.
Did they?
Yeah.
That was a creepy song. Creepy, but very popular at the time.
Very popular at the time.
I read on the statistics that Barbie's signature colour of pink is Pantone 219.
And is it copyright, given our previous episode on
colours? Indeed it is, yeah. But again, within that sphere, no other doll can have that shade of pink.
Colour.
You can use it elsewhere, but not in dolls. And I found a Guinness World Record for the person who has the largest collection of Barbie dolls. And this person, she basically just keeps on breaking her own record time after time after time. So she first got the record in 2005, when she had a collection of 2,500 Barbie dolls. So that was in 2005. Her collection has grown. In 2022, she had 18,500 Barbie dolls and therefore still holds the record. I did the calculations, and going from the figure in 2005 to the figure in 2022, that means she must have bought an average of 941 Barbie dolls per year since first getting that record to what it is now.
Wow.
It's a lot.
Alexander Graham Bell, he of telephone fame,
yes,
invented a doll that said, "Mama."
Did he?
Do you remember those dolls where you tip them back and forward?
Yes, you tilt them. And,
So
yes.
that's invented by Alexander Graham Bell.
Was it?
Yeah.
What a proud accomplishment after doing the whole telephone bit.
Exactly.
What a great sequel.
Yes. Edison invented a talking doll.
Did he?
He built a very, very small gramophone with a very, very small record on it.
Oh, my goodness.
And invented a talking doll.
Wow. God, the other lives these people lead.
Fairly impressive. Again, show notes are your enemy on this one because you'll probably get sucked into all sorts of...
You will. And we're not even sorry.
No. Does it count as a doll if it's made of paper?
I imagine so, because you can get paper dolls, can't you?
You can.
That's actually their name, so sure, why not?
Paper dolls are a big thing. I didn't go into paper dolls. I don't know whether you did.
I didn't.
The only paper doll that I engaged with was, I believe it was on the back of Bunty.
Okay.
There was a cutout figure that you could dress in all sorts of fashion, sort of that week's fashion. So you could put miniskirts on it and boots and sort of flowing dresses and stuff.
Yeah, so you could sort of cut out the outfits in from a sheet of paper, and it had two little sort of hooks over it to drape it over the paper doll's shoulders, didn't you?
Yes. There is, in fact, a fashion show for dolls every year.
Is there?
Yeah, I think it might even be run by Vogue.
Okay.
It's basically they just pose the dolls on a sort of a catwalk.
Yes.
And people vote for which doll they think is dressed best.
Well, considering the fact that the creators of Barbie actually employ fashion designers, makeup artists, etc., to design each of her new looks.
Wow.
That seems to work quite well.
Yeah. There are other sorts of dolls that you don't play with, I guess.
Right.
Voodoo dolls?
Oh, yeah, of course, yeah.
Apparently, it's a myth.
No.
That you basically put some hair or something into the voodoo doll that you're making, and then you put pins in it.
Yes.
That's a myth.
Is that not a thing?
It's not a thing. Although this may be propaganda put out by the pro-voodoo lobby. That voodoo dolls are actually there as a curative. They're there to lure the evil spirits out of your body into the body of the doll, and therefore you get better.
Oh, okay. So I read there was a European equivalent before the mention of voodoo back in Viking times. People would make these dolls and sort of cast their prayers and good wishes onto the doll. So it was actually a way of bestowing luck and health and longevity onto the person that it represented.
This is like a medium through which to access the person.
Yeah, exactly. But yes, so whenever this idea of sticking pins in came along is obviously the very antithesis of that.
So you talked about Build Lily coming from Germany. In fact, Germany was one of the places where dolls really took off because they were really good with porcelain.
Okay.
And porcelain has got that sort of like translucent quality that you get with beautiful skin.
Yeah, sure.
So to have a doll made of porcelain and with sort of like a rouge cheek and with the eyes done properly, it just looked more human and realistic. And so the Germans were very big into dolls. And also they liked the fact they looked right, and also the mechanically and the engineering behind a doll.
Yes.
They were very happy about.
Right, okay.
So in Europe, the Germans were ahead of the game in terms of dolls. And in fact, dolls used to have brown eyes.
Did they indeed?
Until Queen Victoria.
Oh, at which point they turned blue.
Yes.
In honour of her.
Yes.
Oh, great.
So the colour of eyes changed with Victoria. But there are, I don't know if you know Blythe dolls.
Blythe dolls? No, I've not heard of those.
They're actually designed by a woman called Alison Katzman, who worked at Marvin Glass and Associates. And these were inspired by drawings by Margaret Keane, who painted these doe-eyed children. And it was only sold for 1 year in the US by Kenner. And then 27 years later, in 1987, it became really popular again. And then the toy company Tonka bought Kenner Parker Toys and all the rights. And then they sort of exploded again. And they made them in 3 different sizes. These Blythe dolls are quite something.
Right.
I mean, they had 4 hair colours, the Blythe dolls. And you could change their eye colour by pulling a string.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
How clever.
I mean, they're a bit weird. They look at. I think Tim Burton would like them.
Oh, okay. They're particularly large-eyed, are they? They
are very large-eyed. But I mean, their eyes are like 4 times bigger than their nose.
Okay. good, so proportional.
Do you know what the most expensive doll is?
No, I don't. Tell me.
So the most expensive doll I could find is l'oiseleur, which is the bird trainer.
Okay.
And that costs $6.25 million.
Goodness me.
It is quite something. I mean, there are some. I mean, you can get an original vintage Barbie for about $8,000.
Right, okay. Yeah.
There's a diamond Barbie, which is made by De Beers for Mattel.
Okay.
And that's $85,000. An original G.I. Joe sold for $200,001.
Crikey.
So the Loiseur is a 4-foot-tall automaton. It's a doll with a complex mechanism. It's dressed in detailed Renaissance clothing. It carries a sword in one hand, it holds a flute in the other, and it's got a bird. And the doll can play the flute, and it can play Marche des Rois by Georges Bizet on it.
Fantastic.
And it's $6.25 million.
Man. I hope we're putting photos of this up on the website, because I'd like to see that.
If I can find a picture, I'll put one up.
Well, I think that brings me towards the end of my research on dolls. There is undoubtedly far more. There are things we haven't mentioned. There are things we haven't even thought to look at. If you, our dear listeners, have experiences or fond childhood memories of any of the dolls we've mentioned or any others, please get in touch and let us know about it.
Share it with the group on our Facebook page.
Please do.
And like us.
Yep.
Subscribe to the podcast and make sure that you get it every Thursday. And tell your friends.
They will love it, honestly.
Well, thank you very much for listening to Factoraly.
If you've enjoyed it, please come again next time.
And if you haven't enjoyed it, please come again next time because it might be better.
You never know. Here's hoping. Thank you all for listening. Bye for now.
Cheerio.